Welcome back, everyone. This is another episode of Rite of Spring Analysis. Let's jump right into it. So today we're going to start off where I left off last night. It's been only probably 12 hours since I was doing this. And we're going to start off with this huge tutti section, which incorporates at the beginning all the winds and the horns, and then later on switches. The bassoons get a break and some of the horns get a break. And then the trumpets and the trombones get a break. It tends to be the composers use the brass in this way, where they'll use the horns as one section and then the trumpets and trombones as another section, just because the trumpets and trombones have a slightly more edgy sound and the horns have a very rounded, beautiful sound. Not to say the trumpet sound is not beautiful. I love you trumpet players out there. There's a lot of you in my life, actually. Anyways, let's go through and pull this apart. So we actually have one of these little Stravinsky runs up to the top note. So I'm going to just take a quick peek at that because I always like to figure out exactly what's going on here. What notes is he using? So this is going to be in piccolo, and he starts on E. Whoa, what? Oh, I think that flat is for the G. So he's not quite using a chromatic scale. He's skipping over the A flat. I'm pretty sure that no, I see the flat from the G before, and the bar is for the G, and then this is F flat. So it's actually a little octatonic fragment in there. This here is octatonic fragment. I like to note all these little things because when I started composing and I was trying to get a similar gesture to Stravinsky, which is this run up with high winds to a loud orchestral hit, something like that, I started orchestrating those with chromatic motion up to the top. That kind of thing. I'm not going to lie, the chromatic motion does not sound particularly good. It doesn't work particularly well. Also, just a regular scale does not sound particularly edgy. And you want these gestures to sound edgy. So the use of this small octatonic collection here is it keeps it congruent actually with everything else he's using, because as I described in the last video, we have these chords that are like an A7 plus a C7. And those chords are an octatonic derivation. You can actually derive different placements of seventh chords from similar materials. So octatonic is really based on a lot of diminished triads. So you can kind of move the positioning of these chords around like this. There are different positions that work like this by minor thirds. And Stravinsky has chosen, in this case, the most interesting one, I think. I might do a whole video just reflecting on the harmonic materials of this piece. At the very end, once I've gone through everything and had a chance to make a good thesis about what he's doing in this piece. So if we look at the material then, he has this little run up. I assume that below this are the flutes because they have a lot of ledger lines. So that would make a lot of sense that it would be flutes underneath this. We have A, F sharp, or A sharp, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E flat. I bet the last note is going to be C. Clarinet. No. English horn. Do we have any C's in here? Okay, we don't. Pesky. A sharp. A sharp, F. Oh, no, sorry, I'm wrong. A sharp, F. And then he has E flat. No, that's A flat. Oh, it's just thirds. E flat clarinet is going to be playing the... Yep, it's playing the B flat. This is, okay. Tip for all you young composers out there who are writing music in the 21st century now. I learned this tip 2 years ago when I was working with the Winnipeg Symphony, and I went there, and there was a bunch of other composers there who were about my age, and they were all really good composers. Anyways, they were just telling me, like, don't write with key signatures, don't write transposing scores. Always write score in C without key signature, with accidentals. And at the time, I was like, this seems so backwards and such a stupid contemporary thing. Like, contemporary music, don't like contemporary music. And then, as I wanted to write tonal music, beautiful music, that's what I'm thinking. I was like, I had a very different perspective 2 years ago. And then I realized through my work with the orchestra that they were all really right. I'd written a lot of key signatures, and the orchestra struggled in moments where there were accidentals in certain parts and that kind of thing. And so I've come to the same conclusion now, which is it's best to write your scores in C. Both the conductors that I worked with the Toronto Symphony and the Winnipeg Symphony, both said score in C is faster. Just because, think about me, I'm sitting here, I have to look through, I have to translate the language. So B is B flat, that kind of thing. E is probably E flat, I'm assuming that. So in this case, I have to go through and then I have to transpose all these instruments. You can see how long it's taking me just to derive the pitch content of this passage. Obviously, I'm not a conductor, and I'm not particularly fast at this. My view of scores up until this point has been more of a quick overview, just like, okay, I see how it's putting this material together. I see the basic intervallic patterns of his melody. Maybe I'll pull out one chord or two chords from important moments that I think, that sort of thing. Unless I'm doing a piano reduction or something like that, or an in-depth analysis like this. But when you do have to do an in-depth analysis, or you want to really pull out all the details of the music, you just get slowed down like crazy trying to go through and figure out exactly what pitch the composer intended here. I'm pretty sure that all of this is just thirds. So the horns would confirm my suspicion because they are also moving in thirds. And then it looks like underneath this texture of thirds, we have these diminished fifths that are being played. So the diminished fifths are a horn, so they transpose down by a fifth. So it's going to be G and C sharp, or D flat, I'm sorry. G and D flat, and then the bassoons here also have the same pitch material. They're in tenor clef. And the strings land on C sharp, F sharp. Very interesting, actually. It's an interesting chord. But they discontinue right away. So let's zoom back out. So it's pretty clear that all the winds and the horns are playing primary material. They're this moving line. So we'll circle that with red, using red as my primary instrument or primary line. So I'm going to circle the horn here that's just playing the same note over and over again. Maybe we should not circle that, but for now I'm going to circle it. And I like this little gesture leading into it. It's like this. So in this case, I'm gonna take a ratio again of the instruments playing primary material versus the instruments playing background material. I found this really, really, really interesting when I did it yesterday. So we have 4 horns that are playing primary material for most of this section. It's kind of 2 with 1 sitting in the background and 1 emphasizing the start. So horns, maybe we can say 3, just average that out a little bit. And then we have all of these winds. So we have 4, 8, we have 12 winds. 12 winds, 2 horns, or 3 horns, and we have 4 bassoons playing background material with 2 horns. So you can see that there's actually a lot more, he's put a lot more instruments on the foreground material in this section. And I think that he wants to weight it that way because he wants this foreground material to come through very loud and very insistent. Then when he moves to the next section, he does a similar process. So he has the trombones in this case down, and then the trumpet's playing the higher material. In this case, he's doing what you should do, which is he has piccolo trumpet on the top line, and he has second trumpet on the line that is lower than that, and that's it, in thirds. No doublings up there in high trumpet territory. Bad orchestration, doubling trumpets that are really high. We actually have the strings doing kind of an interlocking thing. I'll talk about it for a brief moment. I'll just zoom in on this string bar. So we're talking about this string bar here that I'm about to circle in red. This string idea is similar to something that happens in Tchaikovsky 6 in the last movement. The strings are playing these thirds and moving around in the thirds, but instead of just playing thirds that are like this, they actually alternate pitches in the thirds like that, so that one has a more angular line and so that one has a more smooth contour. It doesn't always work out to make one smooth and one angular. Sometimes it trades, like at each local moment. Like you can see here at the beginning, this guy is smoother and this guy is more angular. And then this guy is smooth and this guy is angular. So they're trading back and forth. But one has the more angular jumping motion, the other one has the smoother motion. So if we were writing for, say, a chorale, it would make more sense to have everyone moving by the smooth motion just in parallel thirds so they can tune everything really well and be very confident in their pitch material. But in this case, since we have instrumentalists, it's not that bad to jump around like this. And this jumping around, I think, is going to bring a lot of musical energy to the texture, because we're not just moving up and down in pitch space, we're also moving in physical space. So you're hearing this sort of like a composite melody from two different sections. Perhaps also Stravinsky had an antiphonal setup where his violins and second violins, first and second violins, were on different sides of the hall. And in that case, you're going to get this kind of like, it's like panning between one speaker and the other speaker really quickly back and forth for each note of a melody. It's like I could imagine someone like Skrillex doing something like that when he has one of those like vocal like Summit I'm thinking of, where he splices a vocal track and then kind of rearranges it so you get the like bop 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 bop, and it's like a bunch of different vocal clips all put back to back. So we have one melody. It's like I don't remember the Skrillex melody. Anyways, this is a similar approach. It's kind of the orchestral version, and so we get this sense that something has been kind of broken up between two groups and it's panning back and forth. That only works really if you have an antiphonal setup. If you don't, this is going to have less of an impact. Also, if you're trying to write really easy music or music for a youth orchestra or something, this technique may not be the best. And then obviously we have this here. This section is very clear. This is like the kind of homorhythmic section that you just play on the piano by banging out a bunch of chords. And the left hand is just banging out these tritones over and over and over again. And the right hand is playing this melodic material moving around in thirds. So it's actually, from the perspective of pitch material, this section is much simpler than all the sections that have come before with all these complex chords, usually about 6-note chords all the time. This chord is a 6-note chord. 6-note chord. Okay, I'm going to quickly look at just how he's orchestrated, like which players and which specific winds he's put on the parts. So obviously he has 2 brass on the main melodic material all the time. And then the second time he has 2 brass plus strings on the main melodic material. But now let's go in and just dissect a little bit how he's put the winds to use. So he has, in this case, he has 2 flutes that are playing the coupling, doubled with a piccolo at the top. So this is a doubling. It's kind of a different wind, so I guess it's okay if there's just 2 players up there doubling it. Oh, so he also has 2 flutes on the bottom part. So he's doubled the top part with 2 flutes, bottom part with 2 flutes. You might have some intonation problems with this. Or is it a duo? I wonder if there's 2 piccolos there. Does it say in the section before? It doesn't. It's probably only 1. It would be really nice. So if I was orchestrating this, I would put 2 piccolos. If I had an orchestra this huge, right? Because he's normally had 2 piccolos, 2 flutes, and English horn. No, what am I saying? Alto flute. Alto flute transposes by G in G, from G. So I'd probably put 2 piccolos and the top flute on the top line, and then I'd put the bottom 2 flutes on the bottom line. That's probably how I do it. Just because there's going to be more winds on the bottom line that are going to like fill out the chorus effect on that note. So you're going to have less tuning and intonation issues. You need at least 3 players to get some kind of chorus effect. So 4 is obviously the best, but 3 players at least to get some kind of chorus effect. And if you just have 2, the intonation may be hard for the players. Just know that. So he's got top 2 flutes. Top 2 flutes are doing the very top line. Then underneath that, he's got the flute, second flute and third flute, and they're playing a duo. And then underneath that again, an octave. Gotta get my transposition right. Okay, so then alto flute underneath this all, alto flute is doubling at octave. So we have A sharp, F sharp, like this. So it's moving around like that. Like this. I think I'm playing one of those notes wrong. No, I'm not. Okay, good. So it's just moving around like that. Third at the top. 2 players on each one of the top thirds, 1 player on the bottom one. So you got third and then 6th underneath. Then let's see if usually what happens is when composers orchestrate a gesture like this, they'll replicate the same orchestration or the same spacing of the chord in other instruments below. And they usually won't have different musical material encroach on that. So they won't like double something down into the register where another musical element is occurring. Everything will just be in this register and it'll be moving around like this. So you can tell that it's all a doubling rather than being like a voice crossing where it's down lower. If you have materials where they share the same register and they're happening at the same time, it's going to make them very muddy and hard to hear. Both of them hard to hear. Unless it's a situation like the piccolo trumpet before in this piece, where very clearly he just wanted the piccolo trumpet to scream on top of this chaos that's happening with everyone else. That's totally fine. You're going to hear that, obviously, because the trumpet can project. Okay, so we have oboes and English horn. Oh, English horn transposes by 5th. That's what, yeah. Aha, I was like trying to transpose it down by 4th. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That note isn't in this. But it does make sense. So the bottom oboe, third oboe, and English horn are taking the bottom line, and the notes like this, and then top 2 oboes are also taking the notes like this. So it's there are 2 of them on each part. There are 2 of them on each part. Oh, fun. This repeated note in the texture that's just happening the entire time. The English horn is also playing just a repeated note that goes through this entire texture. And this repeated note is not a nice repeated note. It's C. So you have this repeated in the minor seconds underneath everything. Just really creating that sense of drama and dissonance. And then we have clarinets here. So it's the same situation. 2 clarinets on top, 2 clarinets on bottom. So he's done that with all his winds. 2 flutes on top, 2 flutes on the bottom, no, moving around. Alto flute just fit in there somewhere. Then 2 oboes and English horn. And oboe and English horn on the bottom. And then 2 clarinets again. So great. That's a good approach to things. He actually leaves the basses out for this section because it's quite fast and quite high. So then he has second and first violins doing the interlocking material, and violas and cellos doing the interlocking material as well. And that is down an octave. So they're like this as well. The pitch material that is playing the accompaniment role is just underneath the treble staff. And because of that, all of his material that he's doing right now, the interlocking even in the violoncello, is above the treble, is like just above where that material sits. So the materials are not really fighting for too much register. Okay. I assume then that this type of orchestration is going to continue in the winds. If you look at the orchestral writing for it, it does appear to be that way, where he just keeps these winds flowing now in this passage. And underneath this, he's going to like change up major sections of the orchestra, but not do too much like small finicky work, I assume. So he'll have strings will do a section. Then it goes back to the original section, which is bassoons and horns. And then it goes back to, actually, in this case, it goes to everyone, all of the brass and the strings without bassoons. So he leaves the bassoons out for the last iterants, but he has everyone going. This time he actually has 4 horns on the melody. And then at the end, he has 6 horns building. So here's a key orchestral crescendo right here. Oops. We have a big orchestral crescendo. And he accomplishes that simply by adding in more players. So players here, then more players in the next section. All right, we've reached a new section. I'm not going to go through and circle foreground and middle ground and that kind of stuff and break it out during sections like this where it's very clear that he's just repeated material. Yeah. So I want to just quickly listen to this section so we get a sense for it and what it's going to sound like. So here we go. Here. Okay, so you can really hear this crescendo here. A key element that I missed when I watched the score is that he actually adds in the bass drum right here. So the addition of the bass drum also really fills out the texture. That change also signals to our ear that the form is about to change. So adding in an instrument that is different than what's been going on for like the last 3 or 4 bars, your ear is just like, oh, something's going to change. This happens a lot in pop music. You'll have like the drum. In this case, it's not an instrument, but it's like you'll have a drum fill, and like they'll start playing something very fast while everyone else is kind of stationary, and your ear just picks up on this change and goes like, okay, the section of the piece is about to change. Something needs to change because there's been a new element that's popped out of the texture somehow. In this case, Stravinsky is accomplishing this basically by using a drum in this section, which he hadn't used before. So we hear that change, and our ear is prepped now. Okay, something new is probably going to happen. It helps that every 8 bars or 4 bars, he's refreshed the texture anyways, because then we're already primed to just expect things to change rapidly from section to section. If he had done like 40 bars all in one kind of like texture, it would be harder for him to convince us that this change, that a change of texture is the correct thing to do musically. So if you're writing music like Philip Glass, it's really hard to change things and then convince people that it's like, yep, that was supposed to happen, because it's just the same stuff all the time. So you'll need a mechanism to like alert the listener, or maybe or you can just do the sudden transition and then just never look back. Thinking of like Goretzky's Third Symphony, he'll do that, where you'll have like 15 minutes of something, and then all of a sudden just everything changes. He'll introduce new instruments and a new tonality, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is now different. Okay, so then we come back to this. Now, this here is actually, he's not transposed it up an octave like this, because it was the fifths before, so it was A and E, right? E and A, yeah. So it was, I'm transposing it. Okay, it was that. Now what he's done is just taken the bottom note and flipped it on top. So what that allows him to do, because you can't actually transpose this gesture up an octave in the horns. They'll run out of range. They don't have those high notes. So because of that, he just flips the top note on top. Then it makes this much more playing. It also much more playable, but it also allows them more like comfort in playing it. Instead, you just put it up an octave and just like, maybe they'll hit that note. then it's more likely that they're going to not be able to play the gesture very well. In this case, they're able to play it. The other option would be to transpose it. So if you want the perfect fifth, just transpose it up, but clearly Stravinsky doesn't want that. So we got this primary material here in the horns. It's key to note that he's still doing the emphasis with another horn. So he has this stopped horn in the background, and that horn is playing all of the articulations. So it's also key to note, before it was two horns with one horn doing the emphasis. Now it's only one horn with another horn doing the emphasis. I think the reason that it's a solo is because it's up in that high register. The one horn is going to be plenty loud, just because it's very high up. And also you don't want to make the high winds or high brass struggle for intonation when they get into the high register by doubling them with someone else. Okay, so clearly this gesture here in the brass, I think this is a moment where he freezes the texture. So he does this horn idea, and then I think he's just gonna like freeze things and make it feel very static for him, or like grow. It's a swell actually. So this section will swell into whatever's on the next page. Am I right? Yeah, looks like I'm pretty right. So it looks like it swells to 45. Although it doesn't look like it has primary material. It looks actually like it swells up and then it seems to come back down. And then there's a brief pause with a huge bass drum hit at 46. Is that right? Yeah. Bass drum hit or timpani hit. And then we have the original material from the beginning, this like chattering idea. Pop, 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 pop. So I think it's like this. I'm just going to say it's probably like this. Okay, let's listen to this short section with the horns. Okay, so you can hear there, we feel this undulation here strongly in the strings, but to my ears, this does not sound thematic. I'm not like, aha, yes, the key melody of this section. It just sounds like, okay, we're creating some tension here with these semitones, and then that huge wind explosion allows us to arrive here at this chord, which also doesn't feel particularly thematic. It just feels like these giant chords that are all coming down towards something. We get primary material here in it's in the basses too. That's cool. Let's look at this. Okay, trumpet in C. So this is now in B flat. And basically everyone else is copying that, except the clarinets. Look at the clarinets. What are you guys doing, you pesky guys? They're just moving around doing something else. So we actually have, in this case, we have flutes and trumpet. And here we have, oops, I'm gonna put it in blue. Here we have this blurring idea. Now this is a moment where I think Stravinsky just knows that the trumpet is gonna clearly project through this texture, and then the reinforcement with the flutes is like, it's got 5 flutes on it, like it's gonna be heard. And then he's using the clarinets here to actually blur this gesture just a little bit so that it's not super straightforward. We're gonna hear, let's listen to that. You can really hear that like the melody is in there, but it just feels more like chaotic than it did the last time. Leading to these guys, oops, should be red. I took a small break, so I'm back now. I'm ready to continue the analysis. I want to specifically get into this passage leading up to 46. There are some key moments here that really stick out, which are these two brass hits. So we have trombones and then this giant horn. It's basically, yeah, it's in octaves. This really stands out as primary material throughout this section. So I was wrong that there's no primary material. There is, it's just long sustained stuff. So we really hear all of these gestures. So it goes from here to here to here, then to down here, then to up here, then to there. So you can see these passing it around, and that none of them are really taking up that much. They're not overlapping rhythmically. This event happens, then this event, then this event, then this event. Events lead to other events rather than events being stacked on top of other events, at least important events. I guess this bassoon gesture is the same. This is doubling. Bass clarinet is also doubling. I bet we've got, yep, bass is doubling. And cello. Nice. They have a little turn there. E, F, G. Again, octatonic scale fragment for those grace note figures leading to something. So it's octatonic. Leading up to an articulation, octatonic material, instead of something that's more symmetrical, like a chromatic scale or a whole tone scale. Okay, let's see what chords we have here. In the piccolos, we start, oh gosh. This is when you gotta zoom in. A, C. A, C. A, C, D flat, C. C, C, D. Lovely. So he's got this A underneath everything in the cello bass. They're playing like a okay, that's pretty simple. And it seems very much like it's in A, but then above this we have the C and the D flat. Now I think here we need to think enharmonically. This D flat, instead of being a D flat, is actually C sharp. If we think like that, it becomes clear that this is this A chord with a major third and a minor third. And then he goes down to B flat, F. So he kind of slides this chord down, moves it down by minor third each time. Yep. So he takes the upper part, moves it down by minor third, and the rest moves around underneath that. So we've got this huge, these chords sliding down. If I was going to compose it, I would take whatever chord I'm working with for my piece and do the same thing, slide them down, and then while this is happening, have motivic material in trombone and tuba. In this case, 4 trombones and 2 tubas. Ba-ba. And that's playing F sharp, C sharp, I think. Yeah, F sharp, C. And then the horns respond with so we've got a ton of accompaniment material here in these giant chords that are sliding. And that is also happening here in the strings with a bass line in the cello bass. Great. I'm going to rewind just a little bit and we'll listen to that. That's too much rewinding. Oh, I don't have my headphones in. Disaster. Too far. Okay. To be at like 35. Yeah, here we go. Let's listen to it. You actually really hear the ba-ba in the trombone and tuba, but you hear the anacrusis much less in the horns. you hear the sustained note a lot. That's key to note. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. You hear you hear the sustained note in the horn a lot more than you hear that upbeat to it. And I think that the reason is it's maybe that the horns are a little bit less good at articulating like that. There are also 8 of them. So you have 5 of the low brass and then 8 of the high horns. So again, Rimsky-Korsakov says that 2 horns are equal to like 1 trombone or a trumpet at full volume. So in this case, if we wanted to equal 5, we would need 10 horns. So the horn sound is going to be just that tiny bit weaker. And you do hear that in that section. So we have some fun stuff here where it goes crazy. So we have this hit and then the main motivic material for this movement and then another hit. And let's see if we can, so it's a 3/8, 5/8, 5/8, because it's 2 groups of 5, and then a 3/8, and then a 4/8, and then a 5/8, and then a 6/8, and then a 5/8, and then a 2/4 with a hit. I think very clearly we have only one material here. There's maybe a second material in that there's a small hit happening every once in a while down here in the trombones. But I think that that's more just like emphasis than anything else. I don't think it's really contributing. Other than that, it's just this section goes and then lands on a giant arrival right here. Pretty simple. I bet the chord that they arrive on is the chord we've been talking about this entire time. Let's find out. We have C, A, G flat, C, A, F. What is that? Yeah, it's a G flat. G flat, A flat. This chord is more nonsense than I wanted it to be. Stravinsky, don't write nonsense. C, A, F sharp, G flat. That's not helpful. Well, it's a derivative of an octatonic scale. So we can see that in a lot of his work that he's using an octatonic scale. In this case, that chord looks to be a derivative of an octatonic scale. If I look at the upper voices, the oboes are playing a F minor chord. And then the English horn has the A that fits into that. So this is like F minor, and then this is like F sharp minor. The F minor chord is part of the octatonics collection as well. The clarinets are playing that as well. And we have C's underneath it. In the horns, we have F, A natural, and C. Yep, this is just an octatonic chord. It's not really the chord that I thought it would be, but it's still derived from an octatonic scale, so all right, fine. And then we have this material, and I think that this material, what he's doing here is he's setting up a little like motor rhythm that's going to go under everything. I think that this is very clearly accompanimental material. So it's like these little swells and then punctuated by rhythmic attacks. It's hard to define this as really like, is this primary material? Is this melodic material? Like, I don't think we hear it particularly melodically. I think we hear this entire section very gesturally. So this section definitely starts here. So this is gestures, right? We're starting to set up some kind of gestures here. Articulations with these little swells in between in the strings. I'm going to quickly look at the pitch content of the strings. So that's pentatonic. Yeah, very pentatonic. It's missing a pitch, but it could be pentatonic material. And then below it, we have chromatic material. What appears to be chromatic material? Yeah, chromatic material. So pentatonic material, chromatic material. Pentatonic, chromatic material. In the center of that, we have C, which is anchoring all of that. So together, yeah, it's quite spooky. Little swells, articulation. Little swells, articulation. Bum, bum. Here, melodic content in the articulations. Then he adds more players to increase intensity. And the players are just doing a more expanded version of what he was already doing. So bottom player is doubling the viola, or the bottom line of that section because they're non-divisi. Bottom line is doubling the viola. Top line is doubling the second violins at an octave. The note that he jumps to from the chord was already in the chord. So the harmonic material is not changing. We've actually seen that largely throughout the Rite of Spring, where there isn't really a sense of harmonic rhythm. There doesn't feel like the chords are changing quickly, minus the section that I did in the last episode. There were some chord changes there. But in this case, it just feels like every section is one chord. And he's just orchestrating and playing around within that one chord rather than going from chord to chord to chord like would be traditional in something like a Tchaikovsky piece or something like that. So there's basically nothing happening here because the pitch material stays the same, but what is happening is rhythmic material. So let's go through and just see if we can determine some kind of logic. So the chords, this first chord is a 2/8. I wonder if all of them are going to be at exactly 2 beats. It appears that all of them are going to be exactly 2 beats. Yep, 2 beats. And then there are not 2 beats at the end. It is then two eighth notes, that is. In the end, it is 6, and then 6, and then 4, and then 4. That's a good rhythm. So that's 6, 6, 4, 4, and 2. Oh, whoops, not 6. What am I doing? 2 and 2. 2 and 2 and 2. Ah, it's additive. 2. So the first one, 2 beats. The next one, 2 beats. Then those add together. 2, 2. Then we get that again. 2, 2. And then it sort of sums together. It's like we add on one more duration and we get 6, 6, 4, 4, and then it speeds up again. It's the kind of thing that when you look at it, it appears to be just completely random, but it also isn't. So I tend to like to analyze the attacks themselves and see if there's anything going on there, and then analyze the space between the attacks. And then if both of those approaches fail, you can also attempt to analyze from a different perspective, like from attack to the next attack, and see if that length is changing. So let's go back and do that now as a rhythmic analysis of this section. So 47, we're here. We have an attack, and then we have basically 2 bars of 6/4. He puts 3/4 in brackets. What a guy. So we get 4 bars of that. 4 bars of 6. So we get 24 beats between. Then we have 1, then we have 6. Then we have another one. We get 1, 12. Is the next one going to be 16? Nope, it's going to be 6, and then we're done. Well, that's a little bit helpful. We can see that he's using multiples of 6 to, because he's using 3/4 bars or 6/8 bars. He's using multiples of 6, first 4 bars, then 1 bar, then 2 bars, then 1 bar. So it's almost like he has 8 bars of intervening material and he's just split them up into even quantities. 1, 2, 4, and then 1. So pretty simple, actually, in terms of phrase construction overall. The length of the first gesture is 26. The length of the second gesture is 8. The length of the next one is 16. The length of the next one is 28. 26. Oh gosh, 26, 8, 16, 28. And then the ending, I guess, is 20. Oh, so overall, we just get the sense that this is a quite unpredictable passage of music. I think that that's what he's trying to create. But you can see that he's gone through and he's thought about how he wants to break it up. I think the thing that's nice, at least for the performers, is that you know that the hits are always groups of 2 and that everything else is these larger bars. And that gives a differentiation. So when you look at the time signature, you associate the time signature with a particular type of material. So when you see a 3/4 bar or a 6/8 bar, you're like, oh, this is the background material. Like I'm just creating the energy while everything is happening. And then when you see like a 4/8 bar or a 2/4 bar, your brain immediately goes, this is the primary hit, the primary material of this section. And then we hit this large trill. I'm going to analyze this trill, and then I'm going to call it here for this episode, just because I have to go and teach a class very soon, so I won't have extra time to get the full hour today. But maybe you guys, or maybe everyone likes the shorter episodes. If you would prefer shorter episodes, it's actually easier for me to film because it's harder for me to carve out a full hour of time to do analysis. But maybe you'd prefer shorter episodes, and if that's the case, then just let me know in the comments, and I'll make shorter episodes. So we have the same chord that's being articulated now in full brass. So that is one thing. He actually omits these players and then adds them in here to create that fullness of sound at some kind of arrival moment or dramatic moment. Again, hold back until the key moment and then use everyone. Underneath this, we have a trill from E to E flat, and then E to E flat in the second violins, and then E to E flat. So it's an E to E flat trill. Wonderful. I thought that trill was going to take me longer because I thought it was a chord that was going like this parallel, but this is just an E to E flat trill. Sweet. Job's done. Okay, so next section, this is a perfect time to stop for a shorter episode. We have reached the next section of this piece, which is spring rounds. And this one, it takes it back to the quality that we had at the beginning of the first movement. It's a little bit more sensitive, and it has this feeling of being soloistic in nature. So I'm interested to go through that one. Again, Stravinsky knows we've been tutti a lot of energy, a lot of sound for a while. We need to pull it back and have some sense of contrast. So here is this sense of contrast in spring rounds. Let's listen to this section with these orchestral hits and just hear these little swells in between. Okay, it's coming up. Just a second. Okay, here it is. So we have this big chord. Yeah, I have to say that these string gestures are really effective. That feels very like warm and beautiful, but this that gesture underneath darkens it. So that's a way that you could use a pentatonic collection, but if you don't want it to have that like bright warm sound or the openness, or allude to like kind of like fake Chinese music almost. If you don't want to allude to that, then put something else in with it just to like change the quality of it. And here we are, spring rounds. So I'll see you next time for spring rounds. We'll analyze some slow music. I hope this episode was enjoyable, and I'll see you next time.